Welcome back, YouTube. So in this video, I want to talk about the kind of give a range for when it's likely that we're going to see these big run-ups in crypto and when it's most likely that Dogecoin will hit $1 plus here. For those of you who've been wondering or who've been looking at some of the data saying, we've hit peak bull run or that we're going to slowly decline from here. I strongly disagree with that tone there. And I think that what we're seeing here is pretty much a healthy pullback, even across the market here. Because if we're looking at like the stock market, especially things that we've seen today, we've seen kind of like this cool off period, but we're coming off a historic year, right? We've had 20% plus years in the S&P. We've had crypto, altcoins, and pretty much everything, especially the top 10 specifically, even the top 20. We had all of them run alongside Bitcoin initially earlier this year before we had that cool off period. So there's a lot of things that happened this year that are unique that kind of gave us a boost here where we didn't necessarily consolidate for as long as we have this for when you compare it to previous trends. So we had that peak there and we had a little bit of a pullback, but we didn't go back to our lows. So technically we consolidated higher than what we would have normally for the majority of this year. And then we kind of launched from there. But I wanted to kind of put some things into perspective here when we look back at 2021, right? And I'm saying we're going to get a identical pattern there, but I want to put things into perspective here, right? I'm going to look a bit here on the macro, but I do want to point out that in mid-January, Dogecoin was less than 5 cents for the most part. By May, it was obviously over 70 cents. So that's about a 1,400% return in that few month period. But we did have some periods where we dipped below that threshold, where it seems like things were kind of like flatlining, and we weren't going to have that big run after maybe even people. Well, not even maybe. I know a lot of people that were selling off and saying that it was going to run or that was it. And obviously a lot of factors are different now, but I want to just point this out just to kind of give you an idea so that we can put things into perspective. So this here, we peaked at around 8 cents, right? This was February, right? February 2021. And then we had this consolidation period where it was just kind of literally went back down to 5 cents, even sometimes down to around 3 cents, right? And literally over 100% drop from, a 50% drop from where we had previously peaked at. And then we had this big run up, right? And this all happened within this time frame. And you can go back and look at some of the other charts here. Typically, this happens. This is not abnormal, that time frame of the run. There was a lot of catalysts going around Dogecoin at that time. But one of the things that I was focusing on here over the last few months was saying that, hey, this is likely to happen during Q1. Right, Q1 is a big component for where crypto is going to consolidate. How this is you're going to be able to measure the strength of the bull run. Retest. All of these things here are going to be done typically within this first quarter, first quarter, the beginning of second quarter. So the next few months are going to be what's really telling here. And I want to kind of point out here before people start saying things like, oh, well, it's peaked or it's over. I want to just kind of point out a few things here. We take a closer look. So we talked about this in the last video. We mentioned the possibility of getting across here with the 14 and a 72 in an ideal situation, which was we hold the line here on fib and we slightly go below it. And that way we can use the 14 crossing the 72 back to the upside as an indicator here of the next leg up, right? And then that big retest that we have around 48 cents. And this, as of now, this is panning out to be very true. And I want to point out that we have not lost any major components here as far as for percentage wise of sell-offs, right? And this isn't exclusive to Doge. This is for Bitcoin as well. You can run this across like the top 5, top 7, and you're going to see very similar patterns here. And this is why I'm not panicked yet, because you'll see Bitcoin, which we're going to talk about here in a moment, trending very similarly. So what we're looking at here is we are trending just below our max fib level here at which we peaked at around 48 cents, right? And we are holding this line going and building up that floor here on the second level, right? So we are not necessarily having like these ups and downs here, which is actually this is actually a pretty solid floor that we're building here. I'm not even going to put a line underneath if you can see it. And we did have that one push down here that took us below the 72-day. What happened? It was bought up and we literally closed back above the 38% mark. So this has been a really a good push here for Dogecoin and really building out a solid floor here, because I wanted to just kind of point out this didn't have to happen here, right? This is where buying pressure became overwhelming enough to push it back up. This is a gap zone, right? We established this gap zone November 10th and November 11th. These huge green candles you see here, these are gap zones, right? It didn't have to fill here, right? We could have technically consolidated back down here to around the 50% mark on Fib, and where we could have been having this conversation of, okay, we had a major sell-off here. Where are the brakes going to be pumped? But that didn't happen, right? The engagement was there and the strength was there to pump the brakes on this fall and literally stop a gap from being filled, and relatively at the top. Because if you take a look here at around was this the excuse me, the 61% mark, you'll see that we're pretty much consolidating at the top of this green candle here. So this is actually, because I know what some people are looking at this saying, oh my God, it's going to sell off stuff. You have to kind of look in between the lines and see that this is actually showing a lot of strength here as far as for where it's consolidating in this movement. So those are things I'm going to be looking for Doge over the next like month or so to see where it's going to necessarily consolidate. And when we break back into this zone, because right now we're literally right on the line. We're right on the line. And, breaking back into this zone here is going to put us in position here, because if you look at the size of these candles and the wicks, typically this is a run zone. So once we appreciate back in this zone here, it won't be long before we do like that retest. And we can confirm that with some of the price action that we're seeing here in Bitcoin. I will say that at least in the last two cycles that I checked earlier today, I have not seen anything where the crypto market had peaked in December or January. That's typically the start, right? And the fact that we consolidated higher and Dogecoin is held above 30 cents, that's all positive news for the aggression here of the coin. So same thing here, what we're seeing with Bitcoin. Right now we're at around 96,000. I know we've touched relatively, let me see, I thought I had a different chart here. Was it Coinbase? Maybe Binance, maybe Bitstamp. Okay, so we pretty much had a zone here where we're touching around. We point out some important zones here where Bitcoin has grabbed liquidity, which is around the 90,000 mark. It hasn't necessarily closed down there, which has been fantastic. We are pretty much running up now and we broke above the 14-day, which has been fantastic as well. And this is one of the things that we talked about. We were saying about building the ladder here versus having these bigger candles. And this is going to be really positive for the strength of the movement. So when we start retesting some of these higher numbers, these 100,000 marks, we're building up a solid floor here of liquidity where we're going to have contracts being here. We're going to have buyers and sellers willing to engage here. This is going to be a very familiar area where you're able to grab liquidity versus those huge sell-offs, right? So I'm not mad at this at all, especially prior to going into to peak bull run. I'm sure you guys remember in 2021 where we, especially with the Dogecoin, where the pools of liquidity versus the price action were so great that we were seeing these huge swings like every day, especially when we got close to around the peak of the coin. So this is a much healthier bull run compared to what we saw in 2021, and that's really one of the things I'm passionate about. And I believe that it's going to set the tone for ultimately where we hit in peak bull run, as far as the fact that we're in a healthier cycle and we're not having these huge gaps in pools of liquidity. So the pools of liquidity certainly are much more narrow this time around. So that's one of the things that I'm going to be looking for here as well, before we get into like talking about like gap territory or filling up for Bitcoin. Obviously, that 100,000 mark is going to be a threshold right around 96,000 now. So it's not something that has to happen necessarily like in the next week or so, but it's something we should be moving towards. I'll say within the next 3 weeks, maybe like by end of January, we should have an idea and be positioning for some retest, if not sooner. And I think that things are going to be a little bit different as far as for I guess sell-offs, or those that period after Q1, Q2, when we hit peak bull run and we have these massive sell-offs where it kind of goes into crypto winter for 4 years. I'm very interested to see how that turns out as well, because now we have a lot of institutions coming in, a lot of a lot of big players coming in, and I don't necessarily believe they're going to dump their crypto positions and say we'll just pick it up from here in 4 years. So I think that we're going to see quite a few things play out differently in 2025. So it's something to kind of keep an eye on as well. And then also we have President Trump coming in, who's obviously been very pro crypto, and we'll see how that kind of plays out as well. Because obviously, if crypto becomes if let's say Trump takes over at January 20th, and we are getting the ball rolling, crypto becomes this hot commodity, just kind of running like it did in 2021, making headlines. Bitcoin is 120K and all that kind of stuff. Then obviously that's going to be a topic of discussion here. And obviously keeping crypto in that spotlight, that can even further add momentum to crypto here. So hopefully that can do a lot of things. And then, we have the Department of Government Efficiency. So we're going to have Doge out there floating in the headlines. There's going to be a lot of things that's going to be bringing awareness to the community, and ultimately getting a lot more people invested into the crypto community as it becomes kind of like a focal point and brought to the forefront of investing. Because the gains that crypto has put up over like the last 5-10 years, it's going to be difficult for a lot of these institutions to kind of produce those gains. So it's going to, whether they like it or not, it's going to be coming as a to the forefront, and it's going to have to be addressed here. So I think BlackRock and a lot of these other companies that are getting ETFs, I think that they have realized that, and that's why you're seeing this interest here. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult for them to sell you funds that are not putting up gains similar to what we see in crypto. So overall here, Doge liquidations. We see more long liquidations here, 2.4 million compared to 1.7. Again, this isn't indicative of the entire market, but it does include some major exchanges like OKX, Binance, and Bybit. So it's going to give you a general idea of liquidations coming forward. So you do see more of the longs liquidating compared to the shorts, but mostly because of the price action that we're seeing here, more than likely this is going to be some swapping coming in, profit taking from those people that brought lower, and they're just repositioning here. Well, that's what's going on a lot with Tesla as well. I know Tesla sold off today. I think Tesla hit like 370 something, and it was going to sell off anyway once that Cybertruck news and all that about the around the Trump Tower in Las Vegas. But overall, that's going to be a lot of people swapping. They are still very bullish on Tesla. Tesla is known to do this. It's very similar to what you're seeing in Doge price action as well. So expect there to be some swapping here, but overall, they're not leaving the asset here. So just kind of keep that in mind when you see like these swings and around profit taking, especially around the end of the year, beginning of the year. So Doge long short statistics, 5 minutes. So we're still technically, this is what I mean by swapping, because you'll see that it's still technically 3-1. No major divergences here where it's dropping down to like a 60-40 or something like that. Shorts are still making up only 25% on 5 of the major time frames: the 5 minute, the 30, 1 hour, 4 hour, and 1 day. They're all roughly 74.3 to 0.6 to obviously 25.3 to 0.6, right? So 3-1 basically long versus short. So longs are obviously dominating the price action here. So it's not something where you see fear or people leaving the coin kind of coming back out. Open interest is up positive on the 24-hour, 2.21, 1.8 billion. Again, when we start talking about retesting all-time highs and stuff like that, we want to see this around 4 billion. That's what is it's kind of like my target here for open interest. When we get to the point where we're talking about doing some of those retests at higher levels, we want to get this around 4 billion. So we've seen some of the peaks here. Let's see if I can zoom back. So Yeah, back in what is this early December, we're around 3.8. So this is one of the things that we want to see. We want to see Dogecoin open interest over 4 billion, and that's kind of going to be like the sweet spot and the threshold. And then obviously that's something that I'm losing. Excuse me, it's something that I'm watching. If we're losing the 4 billion on open interest, then at that point we can start talking about some sell-offs and stuff. So once we get above that and we start running and um, what we call peak bull run or something like that. That's one of the numbers I'm going to be watching to see how open interest starts gauging and how it starts. If it starts falling below 4 billion, then I'm going to start looking at points of or pools of liquidity from where Dogecoin is going to go to either downside to do a retest, or if we've actually peaked and sold off. So that's one of the indicators I'm going to be using there. Overall, like I said, this is, I believe, a healthy part of the cycle here. I don't believe there's anything necessarily um, worthy of saying, "Oh, fear, it's going to be a sell-off." I think that we are in position here to have that major run again, Q1, early Q2 for the retesting all-time high, going to like that dollar plus mark. I think that once we have the transition of power in the White House as well, I think that we're going to see crypto be in the headlines more. I think that's going to be more important. And I think that we're going to have more direct access to advocate for things for crypto, whether that be um, being used for goods and services. I know Jerome Powell said that they can't have like a Bitcoin reserve or something like that. These will be some of the things that can be asked more directly. And as we have Trump and Elon in front of the community more, and I think that we're going to have a lot more solid answers as far as to where crypto is going to play its role here, especially in the short term for the next year or two. So I think that a lot of that's going to play out here before we're expected to have that peak bull run. So overall, let me know what you guys think in the comment section. I'm expecting great things from Dogecoin Q1, Q2. I'm expecting great things from Bitcoin. I'm expecting great things overall for the growth of the community. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section. I appreciate all of you guys. If you have not, please consider subscribing to the channel. I appreciate all of you. I will see you guys in the next video.